Hi Jim, hi Hung. Great to
Hey,
have
good to
you.
see you.
Very good to have you again, and good to see you again. So the background information here is originally Jim's community wanted to bring another topic, but they couldn't for various reasons, and it was like quite late, and it was like, oh my god, like can we find something? And I think that they found a very good topic, which is very relevant for designers everywhere. I won't sort of lift the myth in case you don't know if you are listening, but we'll hand it over to Jim and Hank in just a second. Beforehand, if you want to listen to John, hopefully he'll be back in the sessions, so you can check him out if you're an attendee. Then you can head over to the sessions and search out his session. But you can by all means stay here and listen with us to as we head over into the US side of things and get some talks from there. And in the meantime, do check out also our Miro on the left-hand menu. And without further ado, I will hand it over to Jim and Hang. So you have the stage for yourself, and maybe at the end, if you have enough time, then we can have some Q&A as well, and we'll be providing some further information to all of you as well who are listening in. So yeah, without further ado, Jim and Hang, take it away.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, guys. We really appreciate it. It's great to be part of the event again. Welcome to the 5 p.m. Eastern time slot. My name is Jim Lane. I'm joined this evening here in the background with my co-organizers, Alex Shao, Jody Thomas, and Danita Patel. For those who aren't familiar with our group, Nova UX is a meetup. Over 5,600 UX professionals, many here in Northern Virginia and the Washington, D.C. metro areas. We have folks from other parts of the United States and all over the world. Our group has been hosting monthly talks and workshops since Nova UX was founded in 2012. All of our events have been virtual since March 2020. We are particularly delighted that you could all join us this evening. This month happens to be the 10th anniversary of the founding of our group, and I can't think of a better way to celebrate 10 years than being part of 24 Hours of UX again. I wanted to extend a huge thank you to Jody Thomas, who's in the background. This is her last event with us. She's stepping down as a co-organizer. And before we get into Hang's talk, I just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping. If you have questions for Hang, please post them in the Q&A channel. I think that's right. And Hang will take questions if he can at the end of his talk. And then if we run over, we'll move into the breakout room, but I think we're going to be on time. If you'd like to share your thoughts about tonight's event on social media, our Twitter accounts are on the slide in front of you. Nova UX Meetup is our handle, and Hang can be found on LinkedIn, and that's his LinkedIn profile there. So let's get started. 2 months ago, we had a talk focused on building your personal brand. Last month, we had a talk about imposter syndrome. This month, Hang is going to join us to talk about salary negotiation for designers. It's too seldom discussed as part of our career development. Just gets at how do we as creative professionals ensure we're being compensated fairly for the value that we bring to organizations. So Hang, we are delighted you could help us out at the last minute. Welcome, and I'm going to turn the stage over to you.
Hey everyone, I'm so honored to be here today. I did not expect this at all. Originally, I was supposed to just talk in July. So now that we're here for 24 hours of UX, it's just such a privilege and an honor. So thanks everyone for being here. I'm going to be talking about salary negotiations. And I work currently as a senior staff designer at Boston Dynamics. So I work with robots, and that's kind of my day job. But the main topic here is salary negotiations. And unfortunately, in that regard, I am a nobody. I do not have any background in salary negotiation, no certificates or a degree in it. But I have spent many years focused on it as someone who interviews quite often, and also as someone who likes to help my peers and friends with their salary negotiation as well. So context is important because we all negotiate differently. Negotiation is like a mode of communication, and because everyone communicates differently, the way we negotiate is also very different. So some things that we should always keep in mind is the information I'm disseminating is based from my context, really. And as an Asian man based in the US, there are certain advantages and disadvantages that come with that. So the US, for most states, is an at-will state, which means anyone can be fired or let go for any reason or no reason at all. And that changes the equation quite a bit. Also, the salary question in the US is illegal. So recruiters can never ask you, how much are you making currently? However, I understand in other parts of the world, that is a very common and frequent question. And there are certain power dynamics behind it that affects your ability to negotiate on your behalf. The other thing that I want to talk about is the fact that I'm a senior level designer, which means I have a lot more leverage. If you're a junior designer or someone who's getting into the field, you have a lot less leverage, and your mode of negotiation communication can be quite different. I'll do my best to include as many factors and sides as possible so that this is as useful to non-Americans and non-juniors, as well as, well, to everyone. So also, keep in mind that I'm an extremely aggressive negotiator. We all have, again, we all have different negotiation styles. I tend to be very forthcoming, very blunt, straightforward. That doesn't work for everyone. There are just different ways of negotiating. But mostly here today, I'll be talking about concepts so that you can leverage that in your method of negotiation. I'm also a believer in the zero-sum game. There are two types of negotiation. There's integrative, which means you try to get both sides to agree to something where both sides are happy, they all win. There's also zero-sum game, which is kind of like poker. There's a winner and there's a loser. And my method is more on the side of the zero-sum game. So some of it you might not agree with, some of it you might. And finally, all the stuff I'm telling you is not backed up by hard data of any kind. This is more just anecdotal experience. And it's really up to you to glean the nuggets from here and also ignore some parts that maybe don't make any sense to you, either because of your personality, your experience, or where you come from, your culture, etc. So just take it as you will. Also, I want to mention that a lot of really smart people vehemently disagree with me. These are all messages left on my LinkedIn by extremely talented, hardworking design recruiters all over the world. Tom Scott, Jared Treadley, there's some of the top design recruiters in London and in New York. They are really damn good at their job, and I think any of us would be very lucky to work with them. They also tell me all the time that I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, and that the stuff I'm saying really has no backing. Doesn't make any sense. It's a lot of rubbish, and that it's misleading, confusing, dangerous, and hyperbolic thing that they've ever read in the last few weeks. You clearly don't have a clue what recruitment is. So keep that in mind. It's really just to give you two sides of the opinions or the story. Other thing I want to focus on is this will be an apples to apple comparison. So I won't be touching on all the other aspects of negotiation, which are quite important, such as your benefits, your 401k, your title, your job title, the opportunity that's given to you. All these things factor into salary negotiation, or really negotiation in general. But in this case, I'm really just focusing on the salary because that's always a one-to-one or apples to apple comparison, which is easier for us to digest today. And also, what this is not, I won't be focused on tactics today. So, a lot of questions I often get asked by people who are negotiating is, how do I respond to the question of what are your salary requirements? What are you currently making? How do I ask for more money? How do I leverage multiple offers? How do I deal with exploding offers, which are offers that have a 24 to 48 hour time limit before they disappear? And will the hiring manager rescind or pull back the offer if I come across as too greedy by asking for more money? I'm not answering these questions today because there's this person named Hasib, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, who wrote this really amazing article called How Not to Bomb Your Offer Negotiation. And the URL is here. And of course, afterwards, you can check on the slides in my LinkedIn and read his article. This is an absolute masterclass in how to negotiate your salary in the tech sectors, not just for designers, developers, product managers, anyone who is making, close to six figures or more, who has some leverage in terms of their experience. Just amazing. I read his article about 2 years ago, I think. I think I owe this dude probably $50,000 to $100,000 just due to the fact that he helped me negotiate way more money. So I don't want to copy too much of his stuff. I don't want to repeat too much stuff. Definitely go there, learn on all the techniques, the tactics, the ways to answer certain questions. His step-by-step flow is just amazing. It's all free. Go up and read it. I'm going to really focus on concepts to kind of help everyone think about stuff. as you listen to me, you'll see that there's probably a lot of underlying anger and frustration that comes from um, my feelings toward negotiation. And I want people to really understand that my anger and frustration is not targeted toward any person. So not recruiters, not hiring managers. I think the system is fundamentally flawed, and I'm angry with the system. And I have a lot of personal stories that if we have time afterwards, I can kind of go into. And this all again comes from personal experience. So, what is salary negotiation? We all have different definitions of this. And my opinion is that it is the process by which candidates with the same skills and experience get paid vastly different amounts of money. That's what it is. So, you could pretty much clone me, give me the same experience, and depending on the different day, my own performance level, the stuff I say, I would get different salary offers from companies. Right. So if you had an alternate universe and could do some A/B testing, you'll see that people get different salaries based on how they present themselves, how they talk about themselves. And finally, salary negotiation has virtually no correlation with one's ability to do the job at hand. So your ability as a UX designer does not really change your ability to negotiate salary. And it's quite unfortunate because some people who are really good at salary negotiation can get paid more than another designer who is maybe more talented, has more experience. And that's fundamentally unfair, in my opinion, which is why I might be quite frustrated with the system. So the outcome of this process is quite unfortunate. So you can have three individuals with very similar backgrounds in terms of degree, years of experience, how much value they create for the organization, and they can come out with very different job titles and salary amounts. And that is fundamentally unfair, in my opinion. So what's quite interesting is, earlier I said we need to come at this information from the context of me as an Asian man. Asian men in the US make more than any other group in the US. So if a white man makes $100, the Asian man would be making about $115, so 15% more. And what's really upsetting about this is for women, they make about 82% of what men make. So if a man makes $100,000, a woman is on average going to make about $82,000 for the same role and the same experience. And for intersectionals like Black women who basically have two attributes that work against them, professionally speaking, they're Black and they're women, they make only 63% of what a white man would make. And that adds up and compounds a lot over the career, right? So a Black woman would make roughly $1 million less than a white man would make over the span of their entire career. And that is really messed up because that means the Black woman needs to work probably 10 more years than a white man would need to in order to retire. And that it takes them 19 months to make the same amount of money that a white man would make in 12 months. Fundamentally unfair. So, what I'm trying to get at is the way we currently negotiate salary in the US and perhaps in the rest of the world is fundamentally unfair because it hurts the most vulnerable among us, right? We all have implicit biases. We all are have racist thoughts once in a while. It's just how we are as humans. It's important that we, recognize them and do our best to control them and to make sure that we are not making the same mistakes. And unfortunately, because people have implicit biases, which can be quite racist at times, it means that we approach negotiation with people differently based on how they look, how they act, how they present themselves. It's like a game of poker, right? There's a saying in poker: you don't play the hand, you play the person, the opponent opposite of you. And in salary negotiation, it can be quite similar. So this has a direct impact on the wage gap in the United States, which is quite high. So what I'm trying to get at is, fundamentally speaking, the way we negotiate salary is systematically racist and sexist in the US, unfortunately. And that's quite an assertion I'm making. So on the flip side, fortunately, salary negotiation does not it's not predicated on innate abilities, right? Like, so I want to play in the NBA basketball professionally. Probably not going to happen. Not tall enough, not strong enough, not skilled enough. My DNA probably is not in favor of me playing in the NFL, football either, or rugby. But when it comes to salary negotiation, anyone can do it well. It requires things like confidence, understanding the other side, experience, ability to network, having the right mindset, and your ability to bluff. All things that anyone can practice and get better at. And really, practice is the most important thing when it comes to salary negotiation. Why should you negotiate for every penny? This just really drives me up the wall, because oftentimes when I talk to people, they say, oh, just a few more $1,000. Forget it. I'm not going to appear greedy to a company by asking for another $3,000 or $5,000 more. And that drives me off the wall, because that $5,000 has a compounding effect over the span of someone's career. So in this chart made by Business Insider, they have two individuals, Taylor and Alex. Taylor negotiated his or her salary, and they were able to negotiate only $5,000 more. So Alex negotiated for 45K, and each year uh, they did not really push too hard, so they only got 1% raise. On the flip side, Taylor negotiated for 5K more, so $50,000, and every 3 years they got a 4% raise, because they were the squeaky wheel. They asked for more money. In the short term, you're talking about $5,000 or maybe 3% more. Not a big deal. But over the span of a career, from age 22 to 67, the difference comes out to more than $1 million, which is a sizable sum, right? You can retire much earlier with $1 million. And at that point, Taylor's making $121,000 per year, whereas Alex is only making $70,000 per year. Big, big difference. And this is why we should always be pushing for for the extra $1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000. Not only is it just an extra vacation for you, but you could save it and possibly retire years earlier. That means your ability to ask for $5,000 more, which is just a very simple question to ask, means you can retire maybe a few years earlier, 5 years earlier. That's a big, big deal. 5 years of your life. So when does salary negotiation happen? I think to most people, when you ask them that question, they think of three main points. In the very beginning, when they're asked by the recruiter, what are your salary expectations? Or near the end, when they get the salary offer. We're extending an offer of 100K, whatever, or during the performance review that happens each year. And my opinion is that's way too short-sighted, because that's like saying dating and relationships is condensed down to that one question you ask your partner: will you go out with me? And that's really not it, right? Might be one key pivotal moment when they say yes or no, but really you are putting a lot more effort into becoming more attractive, perhaps, or making sure that that your partner better, so that when you do ask them out, you have built the rapport and the knowledge so that they're more likely to say yes to you. So really, when it comes to salary negotiation, it's always happening. There are all these things you're doing that you think isn't really related to it. It absolutely is. So preparing your portfolio, networking on LinkedIn, practicing negotiating, building relationship with recruiters and hiring managers, all super important. Understanding the salary market, leveraging multiple offers, knowing when to walk away, super, super important. And that means you're always negotiating. It's kind of like sales. Always be selling, well, always be negotiating, always be working toward that. So some of the concepts I'll be talking about will be BATNA, salary ranges, stone skipping, information asymmetry, and research. So without further ado, BATNA, which is an acronym standing for Best Alternative to Negotiated Agreement. That's just a fancy way of saying both parties' next best option. So if we cannot come to an agreement between two parties, what are our alternatives? What do we do instead? So I'm going to give you a few examples to really drive the point home. I was at a music concert a while back, and that concert was sold out. The tickets were about $80 per ticket. But scalpers are people who buy tickets ahead of time, and then they sell them, say, 2 or 3x at face value. They tend to, congregate in front of the concert venue, and they would sell, hey, I'm selling concert tickets. I know it's $80, but I'm selling for 100, $160. Take it or leave it. And right before the concert started, they were all selling at a pretty high price. What I did was, well, we looked at BATNA, right? Because their BATNA is, if they don't sell right now, they can just sell it to somebody else. My BATNA was, if I don't buy this ticket, I'm not going to have a concert to go to. So the concert starts at 8. At 8 o'clock, they lowered the price from $100 or $160 to $80, which is face value, because they're getting desperate, right? They need to make sure they sell tickets before the concert starts. I waited till 8:15 when the concert has already started. At this point, most of the people, scalpers, have already sold their tickets. There are a few left. And I can ask them, hey, I know you're selling at $160 before. I know tickets are worth $80. You probably paid that much. I'm going to just come out and offer you 40 or $20 or $40. And at this point, their BATNA is pretty bad. They can either sell a ticket now or just lose the entire $80. I was able to bargain it down to $20 per ticket because I knew their BATNA was losing or shrinking by the minute. And I made sure that they understood, hey, if I don't see the concert tonight, no big deal. I'm just going to go have dinner across the street. This also goes to the other point where people say, you should always have a job when you're negotiating or looking for another job, because this is important on a BATNA standpoint. If the recruiter or the hiring manager knows that uh, you don't have a current job and you're not currently employed, it means your BATNA is unemployment. You make no money at all. So they can really just come out with any offer and you would basically have to take it, of course. Now, that's assuming that you have no other offers competing. But if they know that the market is really, really bad for candidates and you only have one job offer, they can really just give you any amount and you would be forced to take it because your alternative is really bad. Zero income. You might lose your home. You might lose everything. So another question that we're going to talk about is what are salary expectations? And that's a really common question that recruiters ask. What do you expect to make in this job? What are your expectations? How much you make currently? And my opinion on this is the idea of a minimum and target salary is a really bad mindset to have, because most people tend to say, oh, I'm really gunning for, say, 85 to 100K for my next job. And 85 to 100K means that 85 is the minimum amount you're willing to accept, 100K is your target. And to a recruiter, 85K in minimum means that you're probably making about 80K right now. So for you to go to your next job, you just need like a few $1,000s more. And that's a really important information to have. Your target salary is you basically tacitly agreeing to take the offer if they ever hit that amount, because you asked for 100K. And if they somehow land at that point, you kind of have to agree to it and take the offer because that's what you asked for, right? You don't want to come across as flaky or a flip flopper. You are someone who holds true to your word. So if you ask for 100K and they give you 100K, take it, right? What I'm trying to get at is your salary shouldn't be dictated by what you are asking for, what you like to make, because that is just opinions, right? I have an opinion of how much money I like to make. It could be $1 million. But if the market is not willing to pay that, then that's just fanciful thinking. So what you really should be focused on is what is the market able to pay you? What can the market bear? So what does that mean? You should definitely be asking questions to learn the hiring company's BATNA, understand what are their alternatives if they were not to hire you. And you should identify the delta or the difference between them hiring you and not having you. So if you're someone who has a unique value proposition, you can sell this big problem for them and say to them, say $100,000. That is a really good leverage to use to say, if you don't hire me, you're going to lose out $100,000 worth of profit. So you could, maybe we split the difference, add another 20, 30K to my salary to really make it worthwhile for both sides. And you should always be leveraging your BATNA difference by stating it, because if you see a delta between the first choice, which is you, and second choice, you should remind them so you can leverage that and ask for a higher salary. Also, you definitely want to hide your own BATNA if possible. So what you're making currently, you don't want them to know for many, many reasons. So another concept I want to talk about is the candidate minimum salary and the target salary, which I talked about earlier. So in this example, say your minimum acceptable salary is 85K. If it goes below 85K, you're definitely not considering it, not taking it. 140K means if they reach that number, you're definitely going to say yes. On the other side, the candidate has salary range. Sorry, not this is a typo. Not candidate. The hiring company has their salary range. And that is the initial offer and the max offer. So the initial offer is the offer they first give you, and that could be, say, 130K. Their max offer is the maximum amount of money they're willing to pay for you to have your service. So if we bring it all together, what this means is that the max offer, if it's above the candidate's target salary, is the amount that, the difference between the candidate's target and the max. And if you go above that, the company has to uh, consider the BATNA, which is the higher, cheaper candidate, because you are now over the 150K. So either they hire nobody at all or they hire a cheaper candidate. And they go below the 85K range, which is the minimum acceptable salary for the candidate. That means the candidate is going to say, nope, not going to take it. I'm either going to stay at my current company, I'm going to stay unemployed, or I'm going to keep interviewing elsewhere. So this blue area is a viable range where an offer can be, or when an agreement can be struck, and the candidate would sign the offer and start the new job. And notice that there could be a big range between each of these points. So what should your goal be? The bad goal is to go for your target salary, which is, again, your opinion. And instead, you want to go for the company's max offer, what they're willing to pay, the maximum amount to pay, willing to pay to have your services. And the best skill to have is to take multiple companies' offers, max offers, and leverage them against each other. That's really the best way to get as much money as possible. So I basically mapped out all the different scenarios and mapped out the permutations so that you can see, okay, what if the max offer is above the target salary and target salary is above the initial offer and then the minimum salary. And I mapped out permutations to see all the different orders. So what if your target salary is higher? What if your max offer is higher? What if the only offer you get is at 80K, etc. In this case, in every single permutation for the candidate, if they were to focus on their target salary or their minimum salary, they come out um, with a disadvantage of leaving money on the table. So even if they accept the offer, in most cases, we're leaving money on the table, which means the company is paying below the maximum they're willing to offer the candidate. In fact, the only way the candidate is able to get the maximum amount of money possible is if they interview at a company that does not negotiate offers. And it just so happens that the offer they put out, which is non-negotiable, is exactly the target for the candidate, which is extremely unlikely. This almost never happens. But in every other case, either the outcome is neutral for the candidate, and in most cases, it's just negative. They're leaving money on the table, or they're not able to sign the offer, and they either stay in their current job or is unemployed. So how do you leverage multiple offers? Here's a quick chart to show. Let's assume that the top level is a max offer, the bottom level is an initial offer. You basically want to get multiple offers together and pit them against each other so that they eventually say, okay, this is the max what maximum we'll be able to offer, and this max is greater than all the other offers you have out there. So in this case, these two offers are the winning ones. All the other ones are probably more than 10K below. So you basically want to pit them against each other, leverage them against each other to get the maximum amount possible. And Hasib's article actually talks quite a bit about that. So I'm going to leave the tactics to him. One thing you want to do is when you leverage multiple offers is to make sure they're lined up. So if you interview multiple companies and you start at the wrong or different dates, that means you have offers that are waiting. And it's just impolite or just bad manners to leave an offer open and ignore them, because eventually the hiring manager will say, you know what, we can't wait 3 weeks for you. We can only leave it open for a week or so. So in this case, you basically lose out on this option. This gets closed if you want to consider this offer or this offer, because this could be 1 or 2 weeks ahead. Instead, what you want to do is to open cohorts or batches of applications and try to line up the offer stage around the same time within the same week or two, because that's really the amount of time where it's good etiquette to wrap everything up. You don't want to drag it out. You don't like it if they drag it out, so you don't want to drag it out for the hiring side as well. One thing you can do to figure out what the maximum ceiling is if you only have one offer is to apply the stone skipping counter offer pattern, which is interesting. So let's say that 130K is your initial offer, you ask for a higher amount, and the hiring manager comes back 140K. So there's a 10K difference. If you ask again, they're not going to go more than 10K difference for the second counter offer. It's going to be only 5K more. If you ask again, it's going to be even less than that, so 3K more. So it's kind of like skipping a stone across the pond. Each time you ask for more money, it's going to be less than the previous time. So this is the real life example. I was looking at a camera on an online marketplace, and the initial offer was for $95. I offered them $81. He came back with a $90 counter offer, and then I countered again $85. So looking at the numbers, $95 is the original price. I minus $14 to $81, and they added $9 to $81 to $90 from $81, and then I've subtracted another $5 to $85. So 14.95 skipping stone pattern. Pretty cool seeing this in real life. So what that means is when you only have one offer and you ask them for more money, you can look at their first counter offer and multiply that by 1.5. So if their first counter offer is 10K, you multiply that by 1.5 equals 15K. 15K plus 130K is 145K, and that's pretty close to the max offer. So just multiplying by 1.5 gives you an idea of what the final offer is likely to be. Next concept I want to talk about is information asymmetry. Basically, both sides want to hide their cards, right? You don't want to show your cards to the other side because that means they can use that against you. So information that the candidate has, which is their current salary, other competing offers, timeline for moving to a new job, and the minimum acceptable amount is information that the employer wants to know. They're often asking for it, maybe either directly or sideways. You don't want to, show your cards immediately. On the other side, the employer would have a lot of information like the maximum ceiling, other competing candidates they might have in the pipeline, the timeline for hiring, initial offer amount. They don't want to show that until the time is right. So basically, both sides are trying to cover what information they have so that the other side doesn't know their BATNA or their second alternative. So what will the candidate do if they can't agree, stay at the current job, not have a job, etc.? This is valuable information for the employer. And on the other side, the employer has information like what will the employer do if they can't agree? Do they hire their second choice to delay the project, hurt the team, etc.? The employee wants to know, or the candidate really wants to know that because this is additional leverage. So what does that mean in real life? It means that as a candidate, you might have 4 different offers, say 80K, 83, 90, 94K. If you're the 5th company coming out with the 5th offer, if you have this information, all you have to do is come out with an offer of say 95K or 96K, and you would be able to get this candidate, right? So this information is super valuable. You don't want them to know that. So what's interesting is that salary transparency in New York City has been changing quite a bit. So in only like I think 2 or 3 states in the U.S. has salary transparency, which means that on your job postings you can see what the job is willing to pay for this role. And I think San Francisco has it. New York City is about to have it. Originally, it was slated for May 15th, but it got pushed by lobbyist groups to November of this year. It also got gutted a little bit. And in the letter that lobbyist groups sent out, which is quite interesting, is that compensation offered in the tight labor market may be higher than what other employees are making. That's, a smoking gun. They're basically admitting that they are paying people differently. So given the recent market tightening where candidates are able to ask for a lot more money, it meant that current employees, even though they have the same amount of experience or job title as new employees, they're making about 20% less because companies are putting more money toward hiring. So they want to attract more talent, they're putting out more money, and they don't want their current employees to know that because that gives them leverage to ask for more money. And by having salary transparency on job postings, current employees can use that as leverage, and they don't want that. So quite unfortunate, and also drives home the idea that this is zero-sum game in my mind. The lobbyist group, quite interestingly called Partnership for New York City, is filled with some of the largest companies in the world: Amazon, AT&T, HBO, Bank of America, Barclays, BlackRock, Bloomberg, Etsy, Facebook, Google. You know them, name them, they're here. So one of the most upsetting things when it comes to coaching other people in salary negotiation, especially with friends and peers that I care about, is the fact that 80% of my time spent coaching them is spent on basically me being a pseudo therapist, right? I'm really focusing on emotional labor, making sure they feel confident, really dealing with their past traumas and really negative experiences. And only about 20% of my time is actually spent on actual salary techniques. Normally, if we were talking one-on-one, I would be focusing on your environment, your scenario, your feelings about things, and how you can overcome those things and really be more confident in asking for more money. But because we're in a group setting, I cannot really empathize with everyone. Too many different people, too many different use cases. So that's why I'm really talking more about concepts and tactics. But this is really upsetting for me because it's showing that salary negotiation goes so far beyond just techniques and talking about different things. It actually has a lot to do with your own upbringing, your experiences, your traumas, your frustrations, anger, what drives you. And this is unfortunate because it shouldn't be that way, right? You shouldn't be paid based on how much trauma you have. That's not fair. So in this case, what can we do? The best thing we can do, if I had all the power in the world, I would enforce radical salary transparency. And that goes far beyond just salary transparency and job postings, it means that we should be showcasing data from every single company, internal data of how much do they pay people, segmented, right, based on their gender, their racial, ethnicity, makeup, their backgrounds, how long they've been working there, what is a promotion cycle. That information is super super valuable, and believe me, almost all U.S. companies have that information. They just don't want to release it because it is really really ugly. So that's going to be many years in the making before we get there. Um, for now, the next best thing we can do is to try to raise the tide so that all boats can float. And really, you want everyone to be negotiating at a high level, and that's kind of my mission in life, is to make sure everyone is doing this at a super high level, so that companies inevitably would be forced to say, okay, you know what, this game is stupid, let's just drop it, let's try to even the playing field, because it's too hard to negotiate against people. So that means, we collectively need to agree on what is acceptable and what is unacceptable, because some of the things that are happening in the salary negotiation space is unethical, it is disempowering, it is really kind of racist and sexist. So really what I'm asking for from everyone here is to help disseminate knowledge. So anything that you see here, you read, any articles you read, really talk about it. Share the knowledge, make sure that other people, not just yourself, is able to negotiate better. Because guess what? If we all negotiated better salaries, that tightens the labor market. That means that we all make more money. That's the part of the game where it's not a zero-sum game. We're probably a little bit down on time right now, so I'm going to skip some of the designer interview funnel stuff. That's on my LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to answer some questions in a Q&A. And also happy to talk about random tactics, because I know a lot of people like to ask questions like, how do I deal with exploding offers? How do I counter the offer? What should I be saying? Happy to answer that. And also reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to talk about all this stuff. Also have a list of resources. So again, Hasib's article on 10 rules for negotiating a job offer. Super, super awesome. This is my go-to Bible, my gospel. And I highly recommend you read it, like a 15-minute read. Absolutely worth it. You're going to be making like 10, 20K more after this. Harvard's program in negotiation, legit science-backed negotiation techniques, processes, terminology, etc. Familiarize yourself with it. Super important. Blind for salary in the US, really good for FANG. You can see what other people are making. And LinkedIn, which is great. I don't think they have good salary data, but I use it to talk to ex-employees. So whenever I'm interviewing at a company, I would use the search filter to, let's say I'm interviewing at JustWorks, I would put in JustWorks and go into filters and say past companies only. So these are all the people who used to work at JustWorks but now work elsewhere. And I ask them, hey, very forthright. I am negotiating at JustWorks right now, and I really could use some help with negotiating my salary. Can you share some information from your end? And 9 times out of 10, people are super, super happy and open about it. And that has helped me negotiate very aggressively, because I now know how much they're paying other candidates. Glassdoor, I don't think their salary information is good or up to date, but I do think there are a lot of reviews on the culture of the company, and that can help you negotiate further. Because again, it's not just about salary; it's also about the culture, the environment you're going into. And finally, find me on LinkedIn. So that's my username, URL. Please, connect with me, follow, whatever. Hit me up. I'm always happy to talk about this. I do not run a business in salary negotiation. I do not charge anybody money for it. The only times I do charge money is I ask people who I've helped to donate $100 or $200, whatever they feel comfortable with, to DEI initiatives, so that we can help other people, because this is fundamentally unfair. We are Asian and white men are basically taking money from other people by negotiating better, and that is fundamentally unfair. So Q&A, let's go for it.
Very good. Hung, thank you very much. Sorry, my voice. For the presentation. Awesome stuff. Let me look at the Q&A. We had some questions, and I just want to look at the ones that have some upvotes. So there's this one, for example, not sure from whom. During salary negotiation, can you remove the job offer altogether if you are too? Can they remove the job offer altogether if you are too aggressive with the salary you want?
Yes, they absolutely can do that. But let me tell you this. In all my years of negotiating extremely aggressively, and you can kind of tell how blunt and straightforward I am as a person, like I can probably come across as quite greedy. I have never, ever had a job offer pulled on me, ever. I have heard of it happening before, but usually it's because the candidate is coming across as a complete asshole for whatever reason. They're, they're just doing things that are way out of the norm. Um, I also have heard, people who are very fair, who asked for a little bit more money and got pulled. That has happened before as well. And in those cases, my argument is you don't want to work at that company anyway. They are not negotiating in good faith. So always ask for more money. Never be afraid that they're going to pull the offer. That is such a bad way to approach life. That's like saying you shouldn't ask somebody out because they could reject you and make fun of you and embarrass you. That is not a good reason to not do something as important as asking for more money. That $5,000 you're asking for, that means you can retire 1 or 2 years earlier. That's a year of your life. That's insane if you think about it.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that answer. We have another one. Do you see any difference in the ability to negotiate an on-site versus remote work currently?
Probably not in terms of style, but again, you're looking at the BATNA again, right? Because jobs that are on site, they have fewer candidates. Jobs that are remote, they probably have a lot more candidates to choose from. So that means the field is more competitive. So your ability to negotiate might be further reduced because there's somebody just as good who's willing to take the job at that amount. So it's give and take. I don't think there's a difference in terms of how you negotiate. It just means that you have to be more careful of the BATNA, right? You're always kind of gauging for it. So in those cases, understand that the field is wider, more competitive.
Yeah, I think that that's a key thing in being wider. So I'm sure that there's a couple of countries where the remote work might not be more competitive than otherwise because not a lot of people want to go there. But in countries where I am, for example, in Switzerland, I'm sure that a lot of people would want to get a remote work here. My question got an upvote as well, so I'll continue with that one. I wonder what people's criticism, the one that you showed at the beginning of your talk, was regarding your thoughts, because there's nothing, terribly wrong on first look at it. So I was wondering why they thought that you don't understand hiring at all.
Because I wrote a few incendiary posts that talked about recruiting techniques. So the way I approached it is, of course, recruiters are basically the people who are carrying out the actions on behalf of hiring companies, and they are part of the system. They're basically the ones who are carrying the things out, right? So, and see, this is where I get myself in trouble. The analogies I use are pretty terrible at times. I would equate recruiters to debt collectors. They're the ones who are just on the surface who are calling you out, hey, you owe money. And people all hate debt collectors, right? But nobody like hates on the credit card companies are the people who are actually lending out that money at a exorbitant interest rates without really doing the due diligence to make sure that you're able to pay that back. So people want to hate on debt collectors, but they don't want to hate on the student loan providers, right? So I think that's where recruiters can feel a little bit attacked or very attacked when I say, hey, the verbal offer stage or the pre-closing tactic that most recruiters use is unethical and underhanded. So this technique is where recruiters would say, hey, I'm not able to proceed with the written offer unless you agree on the verbal offer, and we have to agree on what amount it is. And I think that plays into people's emotions and their desperation to get a job and their excitement. Their emotions are just so illogical at times, and I've fallen for it before in the past. So I'm saying, these things are unethical, they're wrong, and recruiters are just like, whoa, I do this 5 times a day, and you're saying I'm being unethical. Yeah, in a way, but to be honest, like designers are also unethical. Like we are making a lot of decisions that are quite harmful for people. But the important thing is that as designers, we look inwards. We kind of think about, is this worth it? Am I going to go to hell for this later on? Do I feel good about myself? And people make those kind of decisions and move on. And I think recruiters kind of have to do the same. They're doing things that can come across as unethical. They are part of the problem where Black women only make 63% compared to a white man. That is messed up. They're part of the system, and they have to really decide, do they want to be part of it or not. And to be honest, I'm part of the system too, because as an Asian man, I make 115% of a white man. So I'm definitely one of the people who are basically taking money away from Black women because I negotiate way more aggressively, and implicit biases are that, hey, I'm an Asian man, I'm really good at my job, I'm really smart, whatever. Probably not true, but people believe that.
Thank you. The the one job that I got through a recruiter, I remember that that they asked me like, what am I aiming for? I said X, and they called me back the next day and said, okay, we got X plus 15%. Do you take it? And it's like, okay, if I understand the math, then yeah, I do take it. So, but I understand what you're saying, and obviously, if you're getting feedback from the system when you're talking about a system, that's not necessarily a bad place to be. I think we have one more question to ask. I'll bring up the other people from the meetup in the meantime as well, so that it will be from the next one. Sorry, still. So Jody is with you, right, Jim? Perfect.
Yep, that's correct. I think Danita might be back there too.
And Anita as well. Yes. So,
There we
go. There we go. Very good. Hi, hi, Danita and Jody. Great to have you here, and thank you for your support as well. So let me look at one other question here. There was one quite early on from Sonia Thorson. I got a job offer and then continued to get job offers, competing for job offers from different companies, especially once I said that I already accepted the job offer. Do you have any tips for this scenario? If a job offer is already accepted, how could one potentially leverage that when continuing to get interest?
Oof, that's such a great question. I just wrote a LinkedIn post about this. So in the past, whenever people ask me about, hey, I already accepted an offer, but a better offer came along, what do I do? My answer back then was, do whatever is best for you. You got to take care of yourself and your family, but your word is important, and this sets a bad precedent. So I personally have never reneged on a written offer or even a verbal offer. I've always followed through, even at the cost of a higher salary. That was my previous answer, and I'm kind of applying shame and some kind of semblance of logic to the situation. Like, I'm shaming the person to say, hey, you should stick with your word. And what's happening recently is a lot of companies are freaking rescinding their offers because the market condition has turned. Coinbase basically rescinded a ton of offers to interns, to people who have planned for months to work at Coinbase, and they gave them like a month or two worth of severance. And Coinbase has something like $6 billion of cash on hand, so they can absolutely like pay, afford a few interns, but they are just protecting themselves at this point. And not just Coinbase, Loom has done it. Other companies have done it. Companies are rescinding offers left and right at this point. So at this point, I no longer feel comfortable telling someone to, hey, you got to follow through on your words, when a company won't even do that. And keep in mind that when you rescind an offer as a candidate, the company doesn't really get hurt that much, right? Like, they are business as usual next day. When a company rescinds your offer, you might be deported in 60 days because your visa is employment based. And that has happened. I've seen that happen. It is messed up to the nth degree. People who make those kind of decisions, there's a special level of hell for them. Like, it's just not okay, super unethical. So at this point, I'm just saying, I'm telling everyone, do what's best for you, right? In the US, in most cases, you get offer letters. Offer letters are legally non-binding, which means they can pull out. We're also at will. They can fire us, get rid of us any point for any reason or no reason at all. We are not protected as employees and laborers. So if they really want to make sure both sides are following through their words, they can put out an employment contract which has stipulations as to what happens if one side pulls out, right? They can do that. They have the option to. They always choose job offer letters because that is legally non-binding. That gives them more flexibility. They benefit from it because of the institutional power dynamics that they have. So yeah, honestly, at this point, this is going to come bite me back in the ass, because when I interview in the future, companies are going to be like, I can't trust you anymore, Hang. But I'm going to tell you, do what's best for you. If a better offer comes along, just be like, hey, I know I signed this, but this is a non-binding offer letter. And of course, say it in a nicer way than I'm telling you right now. And to say, hey, there's 10K more. Can you match that? If not, I really have to consider it because I have my family to take care of and think about. And that 10K means I can retire a year or two earlier, or a massive vacation that my family richly deserves. So whatever reason you want to put it out there, do so.
I think it might be the point where at the beginning you had the disclaimer that you're only focusing on the monetary part. This might be the part to answer Sonia's question where you can bring in, hey, dear company, got an offer for higher amount. I don't want to, pull back on what I mentioned earlier, but can we add a day or more extra vacation, or increase the job description, or the responsibility, or the job title, or something that you feel would compensate somewhat for that? Because yes, as you mentioned at the beginning as well, let's remember it's about more than just the money. So looking at the opportunities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Haseeb's article touches on that quite a bit. I'm not going to repeat his stuff. I really just focus on the money because I really wanted to dive deep into the concepts behind it and why the idea of salary targets and minimum amount is terrible for the candidate and great for the employer. So your example earlier, what do you like? What do you want? You said X, they gave you 15% more. So let's say your ideal amount was 80K, and they happen to have a max ceiling of 100K. So 80K, that's 8 plus 4, so that's 92K. They came back with 15% more, 92K, and you're happy. You're like, hey, I got more than my target, 15% more, and you know what? They're happy too. They just saved $8,000. Your goal should be to figure out what is their ceiling, 100K. Go for that instead. Shouldn't be your target. Like, I understand. Let me also caveat this a bit, because I will freely admit that I am a deeply unsatisfied and unhappy person because of the way I think and the way I approach situation. I'm a maximizer to a point where I'm just unhappy all the freaking time. But the good side of that is I've basically been able to logically maximize the way we should be approaching salary negotiations. So you folks can all leverage that without being as unhappy and sad as I am. So go for that. And yeah, so go for the
That's a
ceiling.
great piece and great point. And I'm sure that if you think a bit about it, then you'll, all of you who are listening will remember that one friend who you feel like always gets like the most out of companies and doesn't, is not afraid to really get the most out of an offer. And just, what, like, be a designer, go and talk with them and understand their way of thinking, and maybe take something away from that. Like, maybe adapt a bit of their thinking, maybe not all the way to being unhappy, to Hank's point. So yes,
I am the emotional support animal, right? I'm the one who's just like, yeah, you can do it. Ask for more money. Just listen to me. And here's the other messed up thing. Almost all my friends who I've coached to negotiate for, at the very end, they accept the offer without telling me. And it kind of goes to tell you, like, I sometimes feel like, hey, there's definitely more money in there. Like, I'm reading the signs, there's another 10K, 5K or 10K. Just ask for it, just do it. And they just feel so ashamed of doing that they just kind of don't tell me about it. And after they accept it, they celebrate. It's like, hey, by the way, thank you so much for your help. I'm like, wait, you accepted the offer? What the hell? What the hell? So I gotta dial that back, of course, because friendships are more important than money. But that kind of goes to tell you like how much emotions and hangups there are in this, and we really need somebody like an emotional support animal, or somebody who is more logical to just kind of help us take that emotions out, because in that salary negotiation process, it's such a delicate and important and pressure filled moment that you maybe need somebody else to help you a bit, or you need to kind of talk it out and look at it again without the emotions.
very good. So I'll ask the whole team, Jim and everyone, if you are okay to go into the breakout session, the Q&A session that you have. And sort of continue there, because we do have a couple of more questions in the Q&A, and I will ask Keith, who is in the backstage. Keith, could you copy over the questions from the Q&A, those that are not marked as answered, into the session, because there's quite a lot of questions actually still. So we have one from Vipa, Andrea, Anonymous, Farhan, Sonia, another one, David, Isaac. So all of you who had the questions, feel free to head over into the session. And Keith, can you just give me a thumbs up on the backstage camera if you can copy over these?